Hello. Now, I had the furniture moved around a little bit for you. Is that better? Everyone's happy now? I know you like... Jesus. You're a heckler in the back line already. This is worrying. Okay. I'm going to launch straight into it. Our next company, they've been around for a very long time. Their name is Spender. They've been involved in the digital invoice space, allowing businesses to trade seamlessly and saving 40% of the operational costs on the invoicing process. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? Is that just water in there, or have you got gin in there? Just water at this point. Okay. Francis D'Souza, would you like to come up and take the stage, please, sir? This is GM and Corporate Development at Spender. Would you please make Francis very welcome, everyone?
Thanks a lot, Chrissy. Thank you all for your time today. I do agree we do need beanies. I've been freezing out there as well. I do have one in the bag if you want to borrow it. Please feel free to come see me after. I'm going to jump right into it and give you a very quick overview and snapshot of the company. So our business proposition is to deliver integrated software in a value chain across supply chain networks. We allow customers to transact easily and simply through our platform. I'll just break it down for you very quickly. In every business-to-business relationship, at the core, the nexus of what they do is a transaction. Someone's buying something and someone's selling something. What our software does, it allows those two people to enter into our platform and collaborate around that transaction. So a buyer can purchase something and the seller will sell something, and then they can work around that order to finalize that invoice. At the end of that transaction is an overlay of a payment. So the buyer can elect through our finance products to pay their supplier, or the seller can enact on an early settlement through our product. So we offer embedded financial products into that whole transaction layer. And once that transaction is complete and the money is exchanged hands, we push that information back into each person's financial reporting system. So that's in a very simple nutshell what we do. So what does a supply chain or an aggregated network look like? And this is the space that we operate in. So we look at the customer side of the transaction all the way through to the manufacturer. And where we're currently operating is here between a storefront and their franchisor or their network aggregator. And we're allowing them to make purchases from the head office, and we enable all that transaction flow, and we manage all those payments between the head office and those retailers. Oh, sorry. So the first diagram is where we're operating with Carpet Court, which is one of our franchise groups. The second one is where we're operating in our second customer group, which is the Capricorn Society. They're a member co-op of 26,000 automotive workshops and 3,000 suppliers. So they cover the Australian market by about 60–65%, and they manage a transaction flow of around $5 billion a year. So anywhere between $500 million a month. So we've been working with Capricorn since 2003, and we've gone through this process that we've been talking about over the last sort of 12 months, which is a digital service delivery, which is exactly the same thing that we're working on with the retailers, with the head office. We're also now overlaying a new payments infrastructure for the whole network. So we've been reporting against that for the last sort of 12 months, about various stages of delivery. And we're going to start rolling out our software in the next, probably this quarter. We'll be completing part of that stage of that DSD, which will trigger a software license revenue of about $100,000 a month. But further than that, in the early start of this year, Capricorn invested $7.1 million into the business. So they have a view of where we're going as a company, and we're integral to their ongoing continuity in upgrading their technology and infrastructure. In the next half, what we're going to do is we're going to roll out a customer-facing solution with our Carpet Court network. It's called a standard operating environment, and it will allow the formation of that transaction at the consumer side. So when we form that transaction at the consumer side, we can take that same information, pass it across to our aggregator to form the order for the products and services that we need to purchase to fulfill that transaction. So all along the value chain, we can pass the same information along, and this is where we want to get to. Integrated software right across that value chain. And we want to overlay that with payment options from the consumer all the way down to the manufacturer, to manage all that transaction flow. It's a very big goal, very big ambition, but we're on the right path to try and get there soon. So where are we at now in the last 12 months? This year we managed to close 160% up, doing $250 million worth of transactions, and we expect this trend to continue as we roll out to more and more customers across our networks. A couple of weeks ago, we announced the acquisition of LinePay, which is, they provide payments technologies in the B2B space, and also they have their own payments processing network. Strategically, it's a good alignment of customers and products for us. We can sell to their customers, they can sell to our customers, and so there's some very quick wins. They generated about $3 million in revenue in the last financial year. We closed our financial year with about $5.5 million in cash receipts. So together we're already an $8.5 million revenue business. With these quick wins, we expect that revenue to grow in the next sort of 6 months quite substantially. And we think that with the products and services that we've acquired, we'll be able to offer our customers a more rounded out solution to be able to offer their customers additional payment services. So highlights, cash receipts sort of $5.4 million. We're up 54% on the year. We've continued to grow our channels, our partnerships, our pipeline of work, which we're starting to see the benefit of now. And we closed the year with $9.8 million in cash at bank. So these are some of the initiatives I mentioned earlier that we're going to roll out in the next half of the year on into the new calendar year. And we're going to see our growth trend continue. So we've demonstrated that for the last 2 years, we've been growing our payments volume. We've demonstrated that we've grown our customer base. And now with the biggest thing, we're going to start to roll out with all of our customers in the Capricorn network with more products and services. So we're hoping that over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, we'll be able to report increased revenue, increased customers, and some substantial wins. That's pretty much it for me. I thought I'd keep it very short and sweet. This is just a corporate snapshot. But if there's any questions, if anyone has, please feel free to come in and find me at the booth. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or go through with you in a little bit more detail what we do. But thank you for your time.
Francis, would you like anyone from the audience to ask you questions, seeing as Chrissy isn't here and you've got about 6 minutes left on your timer?
Oh, I flew through that. Sure, anyone got any questions?
Got one here.
Yeah.
What's your revenue profile? We saw your transaction profile. Is your revenue looking like that, and are you profitable at the moment?
We're not profitable at the moment. Our burn for the quarter was $700,000, so we had cash receipts of about $1.8 million. So, you know, we're narrowing that gap and we've continued to narrow it over time. So we've got a healthy cash balance at the moment. We're not break even as yet, but we're well on our way and we can see that inflection point coming.
Anyone else from the audience? One at the front here.
So do you make money on a clip on the transaction, or are you making most of the money from kind of commissions from third parties like LimePay or AirPlus, where you get that clip on the back end rather than the front end to the customer?
So for our customers, we get software as a service fees as revenues, and on the transaction volumes that go through our network, we take a clip of every transaction. So it's no third parties paying us, it's what we generate in terms of revenue and product flow.
All right, Francis, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Chrissy Morrissey.
Thanks, Francis. Thanks, James. Why are you finishing so early? That's so unlike you.
I'm cold.
Do you know, I actually went outside and I went next door to the IBM conference and I said, do you have any beanies in there that are branded that I can bring in to give to my hecklers in the back row? And they said, no, we don't have any either. So this is an issue across the board. It's not just us. But I did try and find you some beanies. So point to me. And Francis, yes, that's most unlike you. I did try to get Francis to dance at the start as well to that great music we've got from Vertical Events. All right, dude. So you're all good in here? You've all been okay while I went? Obviously, James has stepped up. Francis is great. The next topic of conversation that we're going to have in here is about sleep, because we all know sleep is the window to great mental health. It's really, really important. And there are many of us walking around at the moment who are trying to watch the Olympics and still function as human beings. Now, that's a temporary situation. What if it was a more permanent situation? And what if it just led to more frustration and anxiety? And then again, what if the anxiety and depression were the things that led to the sleep? Which one is each? This gentleman here, he has a solution. And it's already up and running in America, where there are many, many, many more sleepless people than there are here. This is Kai's son. He is the COO of TrivarX. So they are innovating connection between biological markers and mental health conditions. And for those people who have trouble saying there's a problem and explaining and sharing information, he's got a sneaky little way to get that information out of you. Please make Kai very welcome.
Thank you very much, Chrissy, and good afternoon, everyone. Mental health is one of the largest healthcare issues globally. The World Health Organization estimates that nearly 1 billion people live with a mental health disorder, with anxiety and depression being the most common. At TrivarX, we believe that an objective measure of mental health is the key to helping address this. We analyse electrical signals from the brain and the heart to identify mental illnesses. Our lead product, MEB1, analyses the data from a standard sleep study to identify depression at over 85% sensitivity compared to the standard of care, which is less than 50% accurate. So we're headquartered in Perth, Australia, with our operations out of Minnesota in the United States. We're capped at roughly 15 to 16. Fidelity Investments is our largest shareholder, who has backed us from the start, and our board is deeply experienced in commercialising medical technology and digital health in the US. We're well funded, having recently closed a placement in May, the second tranche closing 3 weeks ago, and we'll be receiving an R&D refund towards the end of this calendar year. So today I'd like to walk you through our technology, our scientific and clinical expertise, and why board and management believe this company is positioned to be the world leaders in using AI to develop objective mental health assessment. Our team has collated one of the largest repositories of sleep studies, coupled with neuropsychiatric evaluations in the world, and we're closing in on a de novo submission with the FDA, the first of its kind. We also have a unique near-term opportunity to deploy our solution into US sleep centres to address an unmet need, but also an opportunity to begin expanding our technology into even larger markets that are desperate for objective mental health tools. So within the US alone, 1 in 5 are experiencing a mental illness. 1 in 25 are living with serious mental health conditions. However, more than half of these adults with serious mental health conditions receive no treatment. Although we know there is a problem and there are tools available, mental health misdiagnosis in the US is rife. The current standard of care and tools used by clinicians are subjective. They're based on questionnaires on how patients are feeling, what symptoms they're experiencing, and how they're coping with medications. Tools such as the PHQ-9 and the Mini are purely subjective, relying on both the patient and clinician's interpretation of symptoms. As such, we're seeing 50% of serious mental health disorders being untreated, clinicians on average getting the diagnosis wrong 48% of the time. You can see here the misdiagnosis of MDD, major depressive disorder, is 66%, social anxiety is 98%, bipolar is 93%. It's a huge amount of the population getting the wrong information and getting the wrong care. So our approach to addressing this problem, as Chrissy said, is in sleep and its link with mental health. We know from the literature that 75% of people with diagnosed depression also suffer from disrupted sleep patterns. The brain and the heart are intricately linked, and by studying patterns in physical biomarkers during sleep using AI, our team can now see, discover, and analyze things the human eye cannot through our technology. Dr. Archie DeFillo heads up our clinical research and spent 25 years as a practicing neurosurgeon in South Africa. So I'm sure you can imagine the amount of operations he's seen before transitioning into research on both the brain and the heart. He's a truly incredible researcher and a real-world leader in the field of brain and heart signal analysis, while Dr. Massi Grassi, who's in his own right very brilliant, has been playing around and working in AI for over 15 years before it was as prevalent as it is today. He also has a PhD in psychology, so a really nice blend between him and Dr. DeFillo. We've been able to describe several unique proprietary TrivarX biomarkers undiscovered in research that form the basis of our technology and our algorithms. So just quickly at a high level, our process begins with extracting standard brain and heart signals before identifying a set of variables based on current scientific evidence. Using a supervised machine learning model, it is trained on these variables collected during our clinical trials. These variables that demonstrate statistical significance during testing are converted into proprietary predictors. From our work to date, we use over 60 predictors ranging across sleep architecture, continuity, latency, REM, EEG frequency bands, etc., which are further tested and then integrated to enhance the algorithm's performance. This process enables us to identify the presence or the absence of mental health indications, and with larger training data sets, our model becomes more accurate. This technology is underpinned by a series of patents. We're well protected, and our technology has been completely developed in-house. There's no licensing with universities or future royalties. We own 100% of it. And along with the team is the sole reason why myself and the board have been involved with this company. I actually recently attended the World Sleep Conference in Houston a few months ago, and a high-ranking Navy commander who heads up sleep research for warfighters said to me, he's never seen any technology like this unlocking the connection between HRV and sleep and mental health. And in his words, this could change the way all sleep analysis, both in the research and the commercial fields, are done moving forward, which of course was a massive tick of industry validation for the company. So over the last few years, we've collected and built one of the largest repositories of sleep study data combined with patient mental health statuses in the world. Across our clinical trials, we've compiled over 1,000 unique patient cases with over 1,000 patient health questionnaires, each individually evaluated by clinicians, and over 400 face-to-face structured interviews assessing cases of bipolar, panic disorder, PTSD, and the list goes on. So our first mental health indication, of course, is depression. We're targeting this major market because 1, we know clinicians miss 50% of the time. 2, less than 2% of US adults are screened for depression at the primary care level. 3, there is no depression screening at all conducted in sleep clinics, both in the US and globally. And lastly, 21% of people undergoing a sleep study have depression. Our algorithm is the only objective depression screening tool for sleep centres. We're agnostic to different sleep hardware and software. We take a standard sleep study EDF file from a sleep study, we run it through our software, and we can accurately identify patients with and without depression higher than the current standard of care. We're well advanced, and off the back of our phase 2, which our results were announced yesterday, we've had multiple positive engagements with the FDA, and we're confident we can replicate our phase 2 trial in a pivotal trial commencing later this year to complete the final checklist item for a de novo submission in 2025. So just quickly on our phase 2, we enrolled 400 patients across 15 sleep centres in the US. It was a very cost-effective trial. Patients were already referred to sleep studies for suspected obstructive sleep apnea and sleep disorders. So we didn't have to pay for those sleep studies. We simply engaged nurse practitioners to conduct the mini structured interview via telehealth right before the patients went to sleep. As you can see, our algorithm was able to correctly identify 87% of patients with depression. This is 16% higher than our phase 1. We had a specificity of 72%, a PPV of 35%, which we're very happy with, as this is on the upper end of the industry standard for depression screening, and a negative predictive value of 97%. The key stat here I'd like you to pay attention to is, as a screening tool to be widely deployed, this NPV number signifies the likelihood a patient has depression when testing negative on our algorithm is less than 3%. Therefore, we're not missing any patients or any are falling through the cracks. So these phase 2 results have de-risked the company significantly. With these accuracy levels, our pivotal trial should almost be a carbon copy of this phase 2 our team has successfully executed. So beyond the initial commercial opportunity of widespread sleep study, sleep centre deployment, our validation of the algorithm and these strong results now open an array of opportunities for us to explore. These results matter to us because we have clinical evidence in our hands. We have the conviction to go after commercial opportunities across 2 different axes. The first and natural fit is expanding indications, like I've touched on. Our database already contains data on other prevalent mental illnesses, and through our clinical and technological expertise that we've already demonstrated with MEB1, we can begin leveraging this database and these algorithms to provide objective assessment for other illnesses. This can then allow us to move into things like therapy management and long-term monitoring, which of course comes in the right-hand side of this slide. We've started with in-clinic sleep labs because this is where the richest data source lies in type 1 polysomnographies. Our next move will be moving into at-home sleep studies, type 2 PSGs, as well as specialist consumer devices such as small wearable headbands that still provide EEG signals. We've been in discussion with numerous providers over the last few months, and we can now push into these different markets. Of course, you're probably thinking, what's the holy grail opportunity? And we want to take this technology into the most used wearables around the world. We can provide further insights and, more importantly, an objective measure on mental health assessment and ongoing tracking of sophisticated sleep analysis, and see what is the reception to medication and changes in external factors. So with that said, I'd like to leave you all with a quick snapshot of what's ahead for TrivarX. We're working quickly to finalise our pivotal trial study design before our next meeting with the FDA, where we'll get the final tick to begin enrolling patients before year end. As part of this trial, we'll begin commencing new study sites across the US and hope to release news soon on some of the high volume, well-established centres we're in formal discussions with. We've also been speaking with several KOLs, both on the research scientific side, but also on the commercial sleep side, with potential board appointments to begin building out the strategic partnerships I mentioned earlier. And hopefully by this time next year, we've completed our pivotal trial and submitted our de novo application to the FDA. Thank you all for your time today. If you're interested in the company and the technology, our 3 big takeaways are: 1, world-class team that's well-funded, developing world-class technology on the linkage between sleep and mental health. 2, exceptional phase 2 results that have de-risked the company moving into a pivotal trial. 3, we're capped at 15 mil. There is considerable upside on this company, and we're confident we can deliver a lot of value for shareholders as we continue to move through these milestones. So please pay more attention to your sleep. Please put us on your watch list. We have a lot of news flow coming over the next few months, and we'd love to have you on the journey. Thanks.
Thanks, Kai. Yes, okay, so we've had a lesson as well as to investment potential. When are you coming to Australia? Did you say that? Did I miss that? Once you've gone to the US, great. Okay, fabulous. All right, we're going to change gears completely now. We're going from medical to clean energy solutions. And at the forefront is our next presentation. We've got Hazer Group joining us up on stage at TechKnow. They're a leader in low-emission clean hydrogen and graphite production with a mission of driving decarbonisation efforts across the energy sector. This fellow is Corrie. He is their CEO. He leads them admirably. He's an industry expert with 25 years of experience across the traditional and also the renewable energy sector. Now, would you like my microphone? Because I know you like to wander around.
I'll hold on to it. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you would, yeah.
And I don't want to fall asleep. All right. Thanks, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back again this year. I'm going to jump straight in, just given the time. For those who are not familiar with Hazer, Hazer stands for Hydrogen and Zero Emissions Research. That was the vision of the company about 17 years ago. That's the reality of the company today. We are developing a really unique, disruptive and innovative climate technology that effectively produces clean hydrogen and graphite with zero emissions that's getting picked up by global industry as we speak. I want to start with the market because I think the market sets a lot of context on what we're doing as a company. If you look at the market today, it's about 100 million tonnes per annum. A lot of people don't appreciate actually how big the market is for hydrogen. All of that is used for two things, desulfurizing crude oil and ammonia production and fertilizer production, two very, very big industries. All of that is produced with one process called steam methane reforming. I refer to it as dirty hydrogen. Every tonne of hydrogen produced today is associated with about 11 tonnes of CO2. So it's actually producing more CO2 than it is hydrogen. And that is our disruption as a market. So a very big market that is effectively ripe for disruption with a clean technology. So what does Hazer do? Hazer is a low emissions, low cost pyrolysis technology. We're not green hydrogen, and I'll come to what that means shortly. We're producing clean hydrogen and we're producing graphite at the same time. We effectively take any methane-rich feedstock, LNG, gas, biogas, wastewater treatment gas, anything that's methane-rich, and those who follow gas markets know that methane is 25 times more harmful than CO2. And effectively, we accelerate the decarbonisation of gas by converting it and splitting it into pure hydrogen and carbon in the form of graphite with zero emissions, okay? Now, the X factor that we bring to the entire industry that's under IP in 32 jurisdictions around the world with 64 patents under 4 IP families is the use of a catalyst, an iron ore catalyst. It's cheap and it's very abundant. And it dramatically reduces the temperature of our reaction to about 700 to 900 degrees. Everybody else in the world that's doing this is doing it about 1500, 1800 and 2000 degrees Celsius. So you can see immediately the disruption that we have and the competitive advantage that we have relative to others, and we can be even up to half of the cost of most hydrogen production technologies today. One technology that serves 3 very important and valuable markets, the hydrogen market, the critical mineral market through graphite, and overall industry decarbonisation. Okay, so let's break down hydrogen technologies a little bit because there's a bit of news flow on hydrogen going on at the moment, and you will have seen Fortescue pulling out of some of its big projects. Hazer, we talked about natural gas in, electricity in to produce hydrogen and graphite, okay? Zero emissions, very low carbon intensity, very low energy intensity, so our power requirement and our cost is low. We're available today and ready to deploy at scale as a very advanced technology. Steam methane reforming I spoke about, today's incumbent technology. Dirty hydrogen, every ton of hydrogen is 11 tons of CO2. That's the CO2 footprint per kilogram. You can see how small we are relative to that. That's our disruption immediately today. Electrolyzers, what firms like Fortescue and others do, they split water, okay? It's 7 times harder chemically to split water than it is to split methane and gas. That's thermodynamics, okay? You'll never change it, so you need 7 times more energy to do it. It's 7 times the cost. And that's the principal reason why green hydrogen projects today are not commercially viable, all right? You can see the numbers, it's 55 kilowatt hours to do that, and it's 8 kilowatt hours to do what we do, okay? And it's not readily available today to scale up to large industrial scales that are required by industry. Right, we plug in. So think of any refinery, ammonia facility, methanol plant, LNG facility, anywhere in the world, a big industrial complex that needs decarbonising, that currently uses hydrogen or will use hydrogen in the future. We effectively are co-located and plug into any industrial site, eliminating the requirement for transporting hydrogen around the world and all the complexity that comes with that. We simply provide hydrogen to the customer at the demand center, okay? That reinforces the low-cost model. Here's the cost picture, which is the most exciting piece about it. We can deliver clean hydrogen today for about $1 a kilogram less in the US, all right? That's extremely competitive relative to today's technologies and also relative to, of course, green hydrogen. In Asia, it's a little bit higher because gas feedstock prices are higher, but we can still deliver clean hydrogen in Asia for around $2 to $3 a kilogram. Okay, so these numbers drive out very attractive economics for project proponents and users of the technology. And the margins are exceptionally high for the users of the tech. We've scaled this technology up 5 times. It's not new, it's been on a 15 to 17-year journey. 5 successful scale-ups of the technology to a commercial demonstration plant. This is TRL7. All right, this is the most advanced technology stage you'll get before you go commercial. All right, so this is now operating in Perth. We started up the plant in January of this year. It's going very well. We're about doing 2 things here. Demonstrating the technology works at commercial scale on a continuous basis. It's not about proving the tech anymore. It's about getting it ready for commercialization with our commercial customers. All right? We've just gone through 180 hours of continuous operation. We've just started up our 5th campaign in the last few days. So a really exciting demonstration. Since we've had this online, we've had so much customer interest in the tech, and we've signed another 2 deals for licensing. We have got a growing footprint of customers worldwide. You can see there they are. I mean, this is validating the technology. Some of these customers have been looking at our tech and doing diligence on the technology for 2 years, right? And they've chosen Hazer as their principal decarbonisation technology. Our target markets, North America, Europe, and Asia. In Asia, we're teaming up with POSCO. I'll talk about them shortly. Mitsui on our graphite. In Europe, ENGIE, which is a very large gas utility. And in North America, a company the size of, in fact, 2 times the size of Origin Energy. What's more exciting is behind all this, we have no fewer than 30 conversations with global customers in steelmaking, oil and gas majors, power generators, utilities, anybody who currently either uses hydrogen or has a growth trajectory to decarbonize industry is looking at our tech. Fortis, I talked about, 2 times the size of Origin Energy. They're a massive gas utility based in Vancouver in British Columbia. We've been working with them for 2 years. We've just signed a binding agreement for a license structure and framework. We'll finalise the numbers towards the end of this year. We are actually delivering under that agreement early revenue because we've got an engineering service agreement now that delivers effectively our resources, our costs back plus a premium. So we're starting to mature as a company, and we're targeting an FID for that project in 2025, and that's when the revenue streams will start flowing for the technology. POSCO, big industry, big player, massive problem. Steel making is responsible for about, I think it's about 10 to 11% of the world's CO2 emissions, and it's responsible for about 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So a massive industry with a massive problem. You've all heard about green steel. POSCO is the 6th largest steel maker on the planet. They operate 2 of the world's largest steel facilities in Korea, Pohang and Gwangyang, and they've chosen our technology above everyone else to decarbonize green steel. Okay? This could be massive for us because they need in the order of about 200,000 tonnes per annum of clean hydrogen by 2050. So this could be a massive opportunity for us to really deploy our technology at scale. It'll start around 3,000 to 5,000 tonnes per annum, and then we'd expect it to grow from there. But watch this space with POSCO. They're a big player that are really serious about green steel. Graphite, we don't talk a lot about it, but it's a massive value kicker for us. You've heard lots about the graphite market. China threatened to step on the hose a year or so ago. Of the 10 critical minerals that Australia has on the list, they produce 9. The one they don't produce is graphite. So it's obviously quite a volatile market, but it's quite an important critical mineral. Hazer, by virtue of its technology, actually has, I don't like to call it a byproduct, a co-product in graphite, and high purity graphite that can be produced at scale and large volumes of it. All right, so it's a really unique product that can go into steel making, into water purification, into thermal energy storage, and in the long run, lithium-ion batteries and other things. So a really unique product. We've teamed up with Mitsui, one of the largest trading groups in the world that are really across the met coke markets and other things. They've done significant testing on our product, and we've tested it in a lot of the industries that I just spoke about, and we're getting really good feedback for it. Prices range in the order of somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a tonne. Not that we need it, but it's another value kicker for our technology as we start to kind of produce large-scale volumes at our commercial centres. We're a licensing model. We're 25 people. Most of our team are engineers. We don't have project-level participation, and therefore we don't take CapEx-level risk. We just collect license fees from our commercial partners. Okay? And so that is a very attractive model. When you're not taking project risk or CapEx risk, you're effectively collecting license fees from FID and then royalties from first production. Our first FID is as early as next year. This could be a substantial income stream for our company. Royalties on hydrogen, carbon offsets, we hope in the long run, but certainly graphite production. Okay? Buckle up, we've got a massively busy 12 months ahead of us, like every company out there, I'm sure, but commercial demonstration plant is doing what it says on the tin. We've just been through 100 hours, or in fact 180 hours. We're just around the corner from 240 hours. That's enough to demonstrate the tech works on a commercial basis. We're going to call commercial readiness by the end of the year. It's an important milestone for the tech, but less so. We're kind of running and chewing gum at the same time because we're developing a tech, but we've got commercial demand. So we're kind of trying to do 2 things at once. Fortis, who I talked about in Canada, early revenues just around the corner through our engineering service agreement, and then the final license terms by the end of the year. FID sometime next year, so that project's on a tear. The same again in Japan. Look, I'd be very surprised in the next 12 months if we haven't, again, matured some of those commercial conversations into real projects, either strategic investors in the tech, either customers for the tech, or strategic partners like groups like big engineering companies, which are going to support the acceleration of our tech into a marketing platform. And that has got the potential to really proliferate the technology into the hands of those that are looking for it. Corporate updates, really just about where we are financially. We just raised recently. We've got a strong cash balance. We've also got, again, another healthy R&D rebate coming through this quarter. We've got more ARENA funding coming from the federal government that's due latter part of this year, early part of next year, and then we're front running in a few other federal and state grants. So we've got lots of non-dilutive inflows. We've got a strong cash position that will see us through some of these significant milestones. That's it. Yeah, I mean, this is a very differentiated story in the hydrogen space. I know you will have heard a lot about Fortescue and other things. This is not a green hydrogen project. It is a low emissions, low cost very advanced hydrogen technology that is being validated and endorsed by some of the world's largest companies that are looking for a decarbonisation solution. They could have chosen any technology. They chose Hazer after extensive due diligence. We are in the downdraft of a lot of the hydrogen news at the moment, so you can imagine we're probably trading, close to our 52-week low. The company is in the strongest place we've ever been, strong cash position. We've got 4 commercial partnerships that have just jumped on board in the last 12 months as a result of the technology advancement, and we're really excited about the next 12 months. Got some questions. Thank you. Oh, sorry, there you, that's yours.
I don't mind sharing. Why don't and you grab your phone too? Is that your phone there?
That's my phone.
Oh, yeah, take that as well. Or I could sell it. There you go. And I could buy shares in your company. There we are. Next up, we're going to hear from James Hill. Off you go. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm
See you
off.
later.
Right, no questions?
Put your hands together for Glenn, everyone. Thank you so much, mate. All right, we're going to hear from James Hill. Here comes James now, Chief Operating Officer at Singular Health Group, on how a little West Australian technology company is breaking into that vast US medical imaging market and modernising the way that medical images are digitalised, analysed and shared using advanced 3D visualisation and AI. You want my microphone too, don't you? I'll be charging for this as we go. Here we go. Please make it work.
I need to walk around and heat up a little bit. Yeah, it's great to be back in Melbourne, seeing some friendly faces, supporters of the company, long-time supporters and brokers. As I start off, and before I go into our presentation, I'd like to give you a bit of a situation that you might be able to kind of empathise with. So imagine you're in the US, a couple of weeks ago you lose your job, looking to make some money. You go to a freezing cold investor presentation where you potentially catch pneumonia. You go into the hospital and unfortunately they say that it's going to be thousands of dollars out of pocket. You are no longer covered under your insurance. For about 165 million Americans, that is the case. They are sponsored with their healthcare by their employer. You lose your job, you lose your healthcare, and you can no longer go to the same hospitals or the same clinics or get support from the same healthcare system that you had. So in terms of being able to access your medical imaging records, your medical reports, all of that is locked up inside of the previous hospital system that you were at, or your previous employers, the previous healthcare providers that were basically chosen by the insurance company that your employer chose to use. So it's almost kind of like our super situation, but in their healthcare. So what we're doing is we're helping American patients, American insurance companies, and healthcare, and the timer doesn't start till I go to the next slide, right? For us, we're really helping those at least 165 million American patients to move their medical images, their medical imaging records from facility to facility in a highly siloed, highly fragmented market. So our job is to unlock the full value of medical imaging. That is our vision. We want to give every patient the ability to hold on to their medical records, choose who they share it with, and have it instantly accessible to them. Probably one of the most staggering things to me, having spent time in the United States with our product, is that over there, they're sharing these medical imaging records with CD-ROMs. So it's not like here in Australia where you can just go and request your records or the next hospital can get it. For them, it's all being transferred by CD-ROMs, and they're burning 25, 30 million CD-ROMs a year just to transfer medical images. When medical imaging is trapped in a CD, you can't be applying AI to it. You can't be visualizing it while you're on the road. You take it to your next doctor, they don't even have a CD driver. They have to take it down to the radiology department, upload it into their system to then be able to visualize it. So we are digitizing and mobilizing medical images. We have a couple of, sorry, need to find the laser. We have a couple of different technologies that we've developed that allow for 3D visualization of the medical image. We've created a HIPAA-compliant file sharing protocol. So that allows you to easily share your files online from facility to facility. We have obtained FDA clearance in the US. We've gone through all of the regulatory hurdles and gotten that diagnostic clearance. And over the last 6 months, we've now secured more than 12,500 license sales in the US, primarily being sold to US veterans who are having to take their health records out of the military health system via CD-ROM, once again, to put it into the Veteran Affairs health system and to go around to private and individual clinics. Finally, as I said before, the AI models, you can't apply an AI model to an image trapped in a CD, but whilst in transfer or transit through our system, we are able to apply multiple AI models. So the current state of medical imaging, as I said, images are trapped in CDs. Not only that, but because of a shortage of radiologists, the analysis of images, they're only looking at a couple of select slices, whereas our 3D rendering combined with AI models allow you to analyze the entire image. The transfer of medical images, the CDs are costing them between 10 to 25 US dollars per CD because you're paying for registered couriers, you're paying for the time and labor for it to be burnt, people running around radiology departments looking for CD drivers. And it also leads to a lot of duplicate imaging. So when you don't have access to the images that were only taken a couple of months ago by your previous insurer, you aren't able to just take it to the next facility. And that means that they go and scan you again, and that's adding about 30 billion US dollars a year to the US healthcare costs. So our system allows you to apply those AI models. It allows you to transfer those files. It's got enterprise-grade encryption, and we have a pay-per-scan transfer revenue model. So rather than 10 to 25 US dollars for a CD-ROM transfer, it's costing about $2 to go through us. Ultimately, we're putting patients' medical images right there in their pocket. We have a mobile application that allows them to look at their images in 2D and 3D, along with annotations from the doctor, and gives them on-demand access to digitized images. So ultimately, if there's one thing you take away from today, we're making it easier, cheaper, and faster to transfer medical images in the US. This is just a bit of a graphic showing that kind of broken ecosystem at the moment. So from Hospital One, which is sponsored by one insurance company and using one electronic medical record system. So for instance, possibly Max 7 Technologies. Hospital 2 is using Pro Medicus, the Australian darling of medical imaging. Those two hospitals won't talk to each other. They might share billing records with the insurance companies. They might share some of the reports, but in terms of sharing medical imaging, they operate in silos, and there's no real incentive to allow for that data egress. We tie into their hospital system using a PACS integration, so that's just tying into their local server, where our FDA 510K cleared software can be used by the radiologist or by the doctor to quickly annotate the image. You can see the 3D reconstruction here and share it easily with the patient or with practitioners in other facilities, or even get second opinions elsewhere in the world. A couple of market comparables and milestones to date. As I said just before, we've got all of the appropriate regulatory clearances, not just for the US, but also ISO 13485 and MDSAP allows us to enter into South America, Europe, the UK CA. We've collaborated with Sony Electronics. We have worked with them on 3D visualization for use in the hospitals. And we appointed a master distributor in the US, which is a veteran-owned small business. So this is a veteran in the US who is disabled in service of their country. They get a certain amount of trickle-down funding from the federal government and preferential treatment with contracts in the US. Following their appointment, they actually invested in the company at a 30% premium to the share price of the day, putting in around $1 million. And since then, we've raised over $2.5 million out of US entities who clearly see the value in the company. Most recently, a $1 million investment at 16 cents from a group in Florida. We are working on an enterprise-based approach where we've appointed a number of global sales partners, and a lot of our sales at the moment have come through those sales partners with our 3DICOM for Veterans initiative. So in the US, there's around 19 million veterans. When you sign up for the military, it's not just for that secure employment, but because in the US, you know that you're going to be looked after you come back from combat. So they've got about 19 million veterans in the US. That's not even accounting for active service members, and 22% of those were disabled in service of their country. In the last couple of years, there's been a huge legal act called the PACT Act, which was passed by the Biden administration, allowing for tens of billions of dollars of funding to be put towards medical imaging for veterans who are damaged by burn pits or by chemicals in any war since the Vietnam War. That's giving them thousands of dollars a year to get medical images, but they still need to access and share their medical images between facilities. With this, we've sold around 15,000 licenses to date in a scalable model that sees local veteran support organisations being sponsored and purchasing licenses on behalf of the veterans who then use it to get better healthcare. So huge numbers in the US. There's a big gap between the number of patients who want access to their medical imaging and those who actually get access at this point in time. As I highlighted earlier, the cost difference in providing it via CD compared to via our software gives huge cost savings to hospitals, to insurers, and the hospitals themselves benefit from the reduction in time. And there's over 80 million CT and MRI scans done each year. So our go-to-market strategy, we've got two kind of approaches. One is an enterprise sales approach, and the second is a direct consumer sale. Being software, it's incredibly scalable. We have patients from all around the world purchasing the software from our website every single day, as well as those enterprise sales, which are where we sell it to insurance companies, managed service organizations, and hospitals. There's a number of different revenue models, including subscriptions, which are then topped up on a pay per scan or a pay per AI model basis to increase that average revenue per user. And quite critically to us is an area called managed service organizations. So when I started this presentation, I mentioned that there's roughly 165 million Americans covered by employer-sponsored insurance in the US. Those insurance companies basically just act as administrators. They then pass on a lot of the premium, about 80% of the premium, to companies called managed service organizations. They are the ones who administer the care for the patients. They take on all of the risk of providing that care in exchange for that guaranteed percentage of the premium. And they make deals with the hospitals and with various different outpatient clinics, etc., to try and provide a cohesive environment that saves them money. So they're the ones who are quite interested. We are in discussion with a number of different MSOs in the US, cumulatively managing about 14 million lives at the moment. The idea is to sell them a license or provide it as a member benefit on insurance plans, because it will save them money with the duplicate imaging and with the savings in the transfers. On top of all of this, we do envisage a future in which extracted data from all of these images, when you can analyze every single slice in a scan in a matter of minutes, which would take radiologists significantly longer. And you can do things like this AI model here, where you're actually highlighting or stripping out multiple different segments and structures from the scan. You can quantify that. You can tell exactly what somebody's heart volume is, how that compares to other people in the population, whether or not it's inside or outside of the norm, and flag that for review by radiologists or for use in clinical trials to measure whether or not there's been any changes to the internal structure of a patient. So that's Singular Health. We invite you to add us to your watch list and join us in unlocking the full value of medical imaging. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, none of you get pneumonia today, despite how cold it is. That would not be good. Not be good. Now, our next presenter up on stage has a formidable reputation in the world of biotech. If you've been to any of our TechKnows over the years, you would have heard of a company called ResApp. How many of you in the room actually invested in ResApp? Go on. Oh, Sanjay, of course you did. The wise ones. Well done to you. Smiling. Do you have a very large caravan or yeah? It was a wonderful opportunity. When it was presented to us all, I think it was presented for about 10 cents, Brian? Back in the day when you first started, 10 cents. Sold to Pfizer last year for US $180 million and made a lot of people very, very happy. Brian included, but he hasn't retired. He is absolutely dedicated to making the world a better place through biotech. And he's joining us to talk about a new app on the phone, which is going to be an absolute game changer for the families of people diagnosed or waiting to be diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and a whole raft of conditions of that ilk. Would you please make Brian very, very welcome and listen keenly? Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy, and thanks everyone for attending. And I know it's the later part of the day, you're probably a bit tired as well. But, oh, yeah. So what we have here is this image. I really like it. It shows that the eye is the window to the brain. And neurological disorders is largely a misunderstood section in terms of there's no actual biomarkers in terms of an objective test to diagnose neurological conditions. They're all subjective. It's based on a psychiatric assessment. They do observations, they do a scorecard, they provide a diagnosis in terms of whether autism, ADHD, a whole range of different things. But we're talking about the world's first digital diagnostic test with objective measurement using a smartphone, which is all about artificial intelligence. And we only just listed. So only on early April, we listed on the ASX. We're actually the first company to list on the ASX in healthcare this year. And, we've done pretty well. It was a 20-cent IPO, but we've only just got started. The previous company I did, ResApp Health, I know at one point the share price was up 2,500% from listing, and that happened maybe 6 to 9 months after, it started to go that way, 6 to 9 months after we listed. It started at 2 cents, it was a reverse takeover, it went to 50 cents. So this thing has a great potential, I think a bigger potential than what ResApp ever had. Now, I've got this slide here about autism and NDIS. It's obviously a very topical thing. We get a lot of media coverage around the enormous cost of NDIS. And in fact, if you look at this slide here, you can see that autism is, of course, a massive market in the United States. Obviously, it's a huge opportunity. But in terms of Australia, we have a very big expenditure associated with autism. It's actually the single biggest expenditure for NDIS is in the diagnosis and management of autism in children. So it's a very topical thing that BlinkLab would list in April when you've got NDIS and autism, such a subject of such intense interest from the community, but also artificial intelligence. We've seen NVIDIA. Who wouldn't have wanted to invest in NVIDIA when the share price was flying? It's now the largest corporation in the world, and we're using artificial intelligence in our diagnosis using only a smartphone. Now, how does it all work? So basically, currently you have a child and concerned parents. They're concerned about the child's behaviour, maybe they're not talking yet, they're walking or crawling late. So it starts with parental concerns. They then go to see the GP. The GP is the conduit to going and seeing a specialist, and that then leads to a diagnosis, typically between the ages of 5 and 6. I would argue to you that, most of the parents in the room, your personality of your child is largely set by the time they're 5 or 6. And we all know that early diagnosis leads to early intervention and far better outcomes for the patient. In this case, not just the patient, but also the caregivers as well. So when we're talking about diagnosis of 5 or 6, it's already very late and very limited in what you can do. So again, what we do with the BlinkLab digital solution is it's the same process. It starts with parental concerns, and then we introduce our biomarker screening test on the smartphone. And the way it works is really cool, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. It leads to that earlier diagnosis, and that means that you can then treat. You can't treat a patient until you've been diagnosed. And so that earlier diagnosis leads to better outcomes. And that's the process by which BlinkLab is going to, I think, be very disruptive in the way that neurological conditions are diagnosed and then treated. So our technology is using a smartphone. It's analysing the child's face. And by the way, this works just as well with a child or with an adult. But we're focusing on young children initially because we think that's where we get the biggest benefit in terms of the market. So it's analysing the face and it's introducing stimuli, and there's a whole range of stimuli. But one of the ones I'm going to demonstrate here is an audio stimuli, and it depends on how the person reacts to that stimuli captured on the smartphone that will give that diagnosis. So it's provoking facial reflexes, it's using computer vision and biomarker detection, and evaluates the function. So now what we have here is a perfectly neurotypical young boy. He's going to be given a test he's looking at a smartphone, he's looking at some sort of animation. It really doesn't matter what he's looking at, it's just focusing his attention. And then the phone is invoking facial reflexes in him. And let's see what happens. Now this is really slowed down. Right, this is measured, as you can see, on the x-axis in milliseconds. Now that noise, did you notice, maybe if I go back, I'll try that again. Do you see how the child blinked then? Now that is a perfectly neurotypical response. He's not expecting it, and he'll blink. Every single person here will do the exact same thing. Now let's have a look at an autistic child. Oh, sorry, not an autistic child. So the same child, but we're going to introduce a different stimuli. This is a beep before the main beep, a soft beep and then the main beep. Now it's going to sound like 2 beeps, but actually to the child it sounds like 1 beep because it's really fast. So this is just slowed down. Watch what happens. See how he didn't blink? Now that is a perfectly neurotypical response. This is established neuroscience, been around for 50 years. We're not reinventing anything here. Let's have a look at an autistic child. So this child is definitely autistic. See what happens when he gets the beep. He blinks. Fine, that's a normal response. He's a human response. What happens when we introduce that double beep? He blinks anyway. Now that is an absolute telltale sign of autism or ADHD. All right, so that is an established neuroscience. We just put this into a smartphone, and the whole technology was developed at Princeton University, exclusively licensed to BlinkLab, and listed on the ASX in April. Now, how does it all work in terms of that? The smartphone is really smart. The smartphones are only getting smarter. And so all this is captured and analysed in the smartphone, and you can see, based on these different charts, that the actual difference between an autism and ADHD diagnosis is the reaction time of the child to that stimulus. So provided the child blinks, then we know there's a neurological issue, and we can establish whether it's autism or ADHD based on the reaction time of that blink. Now that's really clever, and you can see with the control there's no blink at all. So that is the basis of BlinkLab. It's really unique, it's fully patented, no one else can do what we're doing, and it's licensed from Princeton University, which means that the patents are really strong. And that's very important when it comes to the end game for the company in terms of both commercialization, licensing deals, and the potential, like with ResApp Health, a very big acquisition. So we've already developed the technology. When it came to us in terms of when we listed, it was already developed, the app is there, it's already been tested, and you can see there 8,000 plus subjects have been tested through the Princeton studies around the world. So this is a very fully developed test. So we're not just asking them when we raise the money to say when we want to go and do this testing. This testing has already been developed. What we haven't done yet is an FDA registrational study. That's what's coming. That's what we raised the $7 million for, and those trials are starting later this year. So that will be the major catalyst in terms of growth for the company and attract the interest of the big players in terms of the technology space. We already have significant partnerships. If you look at the names on that screen, that is, you will not see another Australian healthcare company with the sort of partners that BlinkLab already has. And we've added to this list already. I mean, well, I should say Turning Point is one of the most prestigious autism institutes in the United States. They're based in Chicago. But Princeton University, you can see there, we just announced a partnership with Columbia University. That was only announced last week. And then we announced another partnership with another prestigious healthcare group in Europe. It's one of the most prestigious ones, and they're actually starting their clinical trial for ADHD with us. So that's already started, and that's before we even get into the regulatory clinical trials in the United States, which is coming later this year. So in terms of the actual real data that's really going to be interesting to you is how accurate is it? And so out of those 8,000 plus patients where we developed our algorithms and got it to a point where we're comfortable that they were working well, we did a prospective clinical study. And in this case, it was with about 280 patients. And we don't know in a double-blind trial whether or not that patient is autistic or not. And so in that study, you can see on the top, on the right-hand side there, in those boxes, you can see that the sensitivity and specificity scores was 85% and 84% respectively, based solely on a smartphone, as compared to a clinical diagnosis by a psychiatrist. That is amazing, that a smartphone can achieve such a degree of accuracy. So that gives us a great deal of confidence, and I hope for the people in the room, a great deal of confidence when we enter into these regulatory trials, that you will see, hopefully, this sort of outcome, because that would then lead to a first regulatory approval for us, and then the commercial opportunities then open. Now, there is a predicate here, and this is important to show, that when it comes to the FDA, there's two types of approvals. There's a de novo, which is a first in class, and then there's a 510K. Now, de novo is always the hardest. It means they've never seen a technology like this before, and you've got to bash down that door. But in this case, TechKnow, which is an ETD, they're both big, private, raised over $300 million in the United States companies that are doing similar to what we're doing, but nowhere near as good. So TechKnow is using a smartphone, but it's not very smart. They're using the smartphone to video record a patient, and then there's a little bit of analysis done on it, but it's really just a pathway for remote diagnosis for a psychiatrist. ETD is a bit smarter. They're actually using the blinking test and other cognitive tests, but they're not using a smartphone. And they've actually got a room where they've got high-speed cameras focused on the child's face. They've got much better results in terms of sensitivity and specificity. Not as good as ours, mind you, but they're not using a smartphone, which means it's not scalable. How are they going to make money? Whereas in terms of us, we've actually got it all contained on a smartphone, and all the analysis is done on a smartphone. So it's infinitely scalable. And remember, a GP is not a psychiatrist. The GP is not an expert in neurological disorders. They are the pathway to getting to a psychological assessment. And that is why this test becomes a perfect screening test for all parents concerned about their child. It doesn't mean the diagnosis is going to be autism, ADHD or anything else. It could just be that it's a ruling out, that there's actually nothing wrong with your child. But we still get paid every time it gets used. And that's the commercial opportunity. Now this one here is an interesting one. We did this trial to show on ADHD with a nasty drug called Ritalin. It's basically meth for kids. I don't think it's a great thing, but nonetheless, that's what you get when you get diagnosed with ADHD. And you can see that we, through the course of a day's treatment, using our test every hour, we could see what was the optimal point at where the patient received the greatest benefit from the treatment of that drug. And you can see based on the blink and eye movement that the efficacy was achieved between 2 and 3 hours. That is the first objective test in neurological disorders to show the efficacy of a drug that sells billions and billions of dollars annually to see what was effectiveness during the course of a day. That's never been done before. And I think that will be something of particular interest to Big Pharma. Now, we've got a great board. Hank, the company was really established in Amsterdam, albeit that Hank, who's a psychiatrist, did his PhD at Princeton University, where this technology came from. Anton is actually in the room with me here, and we're also going to be at the desk afterwards. He's a co-founder and executive director. He's got a great experience, as do the other experts in this space. I've got a terrific board. Led by myself. I've been the chairman of a number of companies. I've had a great deal of success. I hope that you can follow me again into this one. Jane Morgan might be known to some of you. She's a terrific investor relations PR person based in Sydney. She's got a huge following and a great network with investors. Richard's in Australia. We've got a great scientific team. Now, in terms of our pipeline, the key thing for you is really going to be about these clinical trials. We just started one in Europe for ADHD. That's going to lead hopefully to the CE mark submission that will make an approval. But the big ones are going to be in the United States with the FDA submissions for both autism and ADHD. So those are the pipelines, and they're both coming in this second half of the year. And then in terms of milestones, you can see, I know there's a lot of writing there, but let me tell you, just all the important ones are all coming in this second half. We've already had a lot of announcements since listing, and there have been great collaborations with prestigious universities and prestigious hospitals. They're using our technology as a platform to go and explore how this technology could be used for other neurological conditions, perhaps outside of ADHD and autism. And that's fine for us because we get all the benefits from being associated with them, and they pay for those trials. The trials that we'll be paying for, why we listed on the ASX, is for the autism and ADHD regulatory studies in the United States starting later this year. And let me tell you, these trials are far less expensive than doing a standard drug trial. Those trials are very expensive because you've got to establish safety before you can get into a great number of patients. We're going to enroll over 500 patients in each of these trials. There's no safety risk to the patient. It's all about efficacy. It means you can start quickly, you can recruit rapidly, and you can get your result that would be, as long as it's anywhere near the results that we've got to date, it's extremely approvable. And I believe it will attract the interest of the big tech companies, the big pharma companies, because that's what happened to my last company. They're looking for this type of technology to acquire and commercialize, and that might be the pathway that we go. Just in terms of our capital structure, you know, we're a pretty small company. We only just got started. ResApp Health actually went from a market cap of $7 million to $350 million in less than 18 months. I think this particular one, being a low market cap today, could have terrific upside. I hope you can join me on this journey. I'm here to take your questions after the presentation down in the conference room, and I very much appreciate your interest. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Interesting, isn't it? Do you remember I said to you at the start of the program today that I was involved in a new TV show called Innovation Nation? BlinkLab was one of the first ones that we showcased. Huge acclaim, many downloads of the actual story and the fact sheet that went along with BlinkLab. So a lot of interest amongst the community for what it can do. And this next one as well, Argenica Therapeutics. They were also one of the first stories that we covered, and also lots and lots of interest. Now, they've been part of TechKnow, so you will have known Argenica Therapeutics. You'll have followed their story over the last few years. They've advanced along the way. We've watched them from preclinical research, I think, weren't you, Liz, right at the start there? You were preclinical research. Now they're in a phase 2 clinical trial, which is hugely exciting. So I'd like you, please, to join me. We're going to welcome Dr. Liz Dallimore up here to tell us about how the story has advanced in the last 12 months. It's really exciting to see what it means for us as potential investors.
Thanks. Is that one better? Got it. Thank you. A few claps. Thank you all for staying to the bitter end as well. And hopefully the temperature in the room is keeping you all awake. It's bloody freezing in here. Thank you so much. I actually had a potential investor come up to me and said, you know, when you presented it at TechKnow last year, your share price was 35 cents. What is it today? And I said, it's 80 cents. So when I come back to TechKnow next year, we're hoping it's going to be $1.50. So I just want to put that in your mind as I start going through what Argenica Therapeutics is. So just quickly, God, this screen is enormous. So I'm going to look down here. We are developing what's known as neuroprotective therapeutics, neuro being the brain, and we all know what protection is. So we're developing therapeutics that can protect brain cells following injury. And our drug candidate, known as ARG-007, is a peptide drug. So this is just a small protein. It gets across the blood-brain barrier, which is really important when we're talking about developing neuroprotective therapeutics. It works in multiple ways. Again, really important in neurology to have drugs that don't just work on a single mechanism, because what we know about neurological conditions now is that they're very complicated, they're complex, and we need drugs that can work in multiple different ways in these indications. We have a really strong IP position. The drug has spun out of a research institute in Perth known as the Perrin Neuroscience Research Institute. This is an institute which actually really punches above its weight. It's had 3 FDA-approved drugs, all licensed to a company in the US that is now worth $8 billion. So that is the potential of drug development in terms of the size that these companies can get to. What I love about this company is that it has been incubated in a research institute in Perth, where I'm based. So we still have access to the inventor, Professor Bruno Maloney, who is our Chief Scientific Officer. We still have use of those labs, but we have over 25 peer-reviewed publications on the drug alone. So the predominant indication that those publications are in our lead indication, which is in ischemic stroke, and I'll talk a bit about that. But we also have a number of other programs that we're progressing, which are listed there. So just quickly, we did put out our 4C this morning. We completed a $12 million placement in May, and we're sitting at just under 16 mil cash in bank, which is plenty of money to get us right to the end of our phase 2 clinical trial. We've been very fortunate to have some really good non-dilutive funding from government bodies over the course of the program of work, and we are well and truly underway in the dosing of our phase 2 clinical trial. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about stroke. Obviously, we all know what stroke is, but if you look around the room, 1 in 4 of you will have a stroke. That are the numbers. Every 19 minutes in Australia, someone is suffering a stroke. So we are talking about a huge indication. So when someone has an ischemic stroke, this is caused by a clot in a blood vessel in the brain. Brain cells last about 3 seconds before they start dying, because brain cells need the oxygen that the blood flow delivers. So if you've got a large clot in a blood vessel in your brain cells start dying almost immediately. And we know that around 1.9 million brain cells are dying every minute that that clot stays in there. So what our drug does is it prevents those brain cells dying. Once one brain cell dies, it talks to the next brain cell, causes that one to die. So what we see in stroke is this proliferation or cascading out of brain cell death. And that's really what we are trying to address with the administration of this drug. This is quite a technical slide, so I will just touch on it quickly, but really what we are showing here, so in the scientific literature, our drug is known as R18D. It appears to be the only drug in clinical development that stops that initial cause of brain cell death. So what we see happening when someone has a stroke is we get calcium that floods into these brain cells. Once calcium is in